Today's episode is a little different because I invited Jennifer onto the podcast to talk about something very specific, skin health. Jennifer is a clinical nutritionist, licensed dietitian, certified nutrition specialist. She's the founder of her own skincare and supplement company. She's the creator of the Skin Rash Rebuild program and the host of the Healthy Skin Show. And I found Jennifer during what I would say one of the hardest seasons of my own health journey. I was dealing with massive histamine flare-ups. My face was constantly burning. Even taking a shower was painful. I remember typing histamine into my podcast app because I was desperate to understand what was happening to me. And I found Jen. I binge listened to her podcast and eventually joined her program because she was asking questions I hadn't heard enough people asking. Why is this happening? What's happening underneath the surface? What is the body trying to tell us? And how do we stop treating the symptom and start looking at the bigger picture? So when I invited her onto the podcast, I thought we were going to have a great conversation about skin, and we absolutely did. And for anyone that comes onto the podcast, I have a form for them to fill out. It helps me to gather questions for the podcast. And in there, she had shared that she had been baptized. And I remember sitting and thinking, okay, God, I see you. I see what you're doing here. Because I didn't get to just interview someone who knows a tremendous amount about nutrition and skin health. I got to sit down with a sister in Christ who had her own incredible story of finding her way back to God. And that became one of the most beautiful parts of this entire conversation. We talked about how God can use things we never would have chosen, how our hardest seasons can become the very things He uses to help other people, how our bodies are not the enemy, how we can learn to become curious about what our body is telling us, and how we're called to steward the body He's given us. And of course, we get into the health side. We talk about chronic skin conditions, the gut, the liver, inflammation, histamine, nutrition, and why looking at one system of the body in isolation can cause us to miss what's really going on. Jen also shares some incredibly practical wisdom for people who are struggling with chronic skin issues, including how to advocate for yourself when you aren't getting the answers you need. And there's one message throughout this conversation that I really want you to hear. You are not your diagnosis. Your skin does not determine your worth, and your body is not fighting against you. Sometimes it is communicating with you. So if you or someone you love is struggling with eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, chronic hives, or other difficult skin conditions, I think this conversation is going to give you a completely different way to look at your health journey. Jen's also given us some resources. She's included a free webinar and a free skin rash root cause finder. So I put all that in the show notes for you. And there's also a Strength for Generations audience special code as well. So make sure you check the notes for that. Now, let's get into it. Welcome to Strength for Generations, the go-to podcast for Christian families who want to build strength, restore energy, and deepen connection with God at the center. I'm Krista Baker, Christian health coach, wife, mom, and co-founder of Baker Family Fitness. I'm here to help you honor God with your health and bring peace back to the process, to simplify what it means to build strength in your body, renew your mind, and care for your spirit, all without losing precious time with your family. So grab your coffee and your ribeye, and let's do this His way. All right, welcome back to the Strength for Generations podcast. Today, I'm joined by someone who has had a huge impact on my own health journey. Jennifer, and I'm going to say this wrong because I've been saying Fuego, but Fugo. I've been saying Fuego, so
don't worry. A lot of people have in the past, so you're not alone, but it is Fugo.
Fugo, okay. Is a clinical nutritionist, licensed dietitian, certified nutrition specialist, founder of DermaQuell skincare and supplements. She's the creator of the Skin Rash Rebuild program and host of the Healthy Skin Show, which has reached over 1.4 million downloads. Jennifer helps people uncover the root causes behind chronic skin conditions like eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, chronic hives, and other difficult skin issues. I actually found Jennifer during one of the hardest seasons of my own health journey. I was dealing with massive histamine flare-ups. My face was constantly burning, and even taking a shower was painful. So I binge listened to her podcast. I actually typed in histamine because I was like, what is this histamine thing? And I found her. And what stood out to me was that she wasn't just talking about covering up these symptoms anymore. She was asking deeper questions. Why is this happening? What is the body trying to tell us? And how do we get to the root cause? That approach really aligned with how I think about health too. I consider myself a very curious person. And I remember being on your first call and you saying, I'm a really, really curious person. And I was like, yes, I found my person. So I know many of you listening today are struggling with your own health challenges. And I believe this conversation is going to bring a lot of hope and practical wisdom. So Jennifer, welcome to the Strength for Generations podcast.
Thank you for having
Super
me.
pumped to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. It's an honor.
Yay. Okay. I have my very first question and it's not about health.
Okay.
Or skincare or anything.
Sure.
Okay. If you could sit down and have coffee with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think if I was to, I have this whole thing and I can explain why this is important, but my great grandfather was who came here to the United States from Italy. And a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I found myself looking over all of his naturalization paperwork that he had applied to become a U.S. citizen. And he never got it, died. And ultimately, in the end, many decades later, I ended up getting Italian citizenship as a result of him. But I never met him. My dad never met him. He died when my grandfather was really young. I got inspired randomly to look at this paperwork and to ask this question, like, where did great-grandfather come from in Italy? And so anyway, long story short, my husband and I were planning to go to Italy a few months later in September of, I guess it was almost 3 years ago. And we went and we did a road trip all through like Assisi and down into the Umbria region. It was amazing because that's where he was from. And we stopped in Assisi specifically because it was like on the way. I'd heard it was cool. And St. Francis of Assisi, like when I was growing up, St. Francis was like, protected the animals and that kind of stuff. So anyway, long story short, I bought a little statue there at the church, brought it home, gave it to my neighbors. And a year later, exactly almost a year, my neighbor approached me and said, hey, my pastor's talking about St. Francis this coming Sunday, and I was never home on the weekends. I was like, sure, I'll go. That sounds really interesting. It was about his life. I went, and that was the first time I stepped foot in a church in probably 30 years, like choosing to attend, and that changed my life. And who knew that my great-grandfather and his story would ripple forward like...
I get like chills right now.
Right, like almost 70 or 80 years. I would want to talk to my great-grandfather. I'm curious about his life. That's who I would want to talk to. And let him know, because I think I find so often now on my journey that a lot of people don't see the impact or feel sometimes the impact that they have and how God works through them. And it might be in ways that are years, decades, even beyond our scope of understanding. And so anyway, I just thought that was like a really neat part of my story that like, yeah. I think I was in hindsight, I think I was honestly inspired by God to ask for this paperwork.
I'm so excited right now.
So, anyway.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is amazing because I know I really, really have so many. We're going to talk about skin. We're going to talk about skin all day long. But I really want to start with a little note that you put in the form about you getting baptized. And are you okay if we start there? Because
Absolutely.
I want to hear this story. Yeah, it's so important. So you got baptized in November. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. So I found my way back to God. And I think for the first time ever, I developed a relationship with Jesus. I grew up Roman Catholic, but I didn't really believe it. I don't know how to put it other than that. I didn't really believe it. And I think as I got to college, a lot of the indoctrination of I went to a fancy school in New York City, and all of the education was like, oh, all of that is nonsense. And, the educated world is so much more advanced, and this is where we want to hang out all the time if we want to be educated people. And granted, listen, there's benefits to both, but I didn't understand what having a relationship with God and with Jesus actually meant. And I really hit a low point where I felt very lost in many parts of my life. And, again, it's like this thing. So at the beginning of the trip, the thing I didn't tell you because it wasn't a part of my great grandfather's story was we actually went to visit family friends in Bologna, and they took us up to this town called Padua, which is outside of Venice. And we went to the Basilica of Sant'Antonio, so Saint Anthony, the patron saint of lost, forgotten things, lost souls, that kind of stuff. We walked in there, and I cannot explain it other than I walked in there and it was like something happened. And it was like something inside of me turned on and started resonating in a way that I couldn't explain. And as we walked around the church, we went, and he's actually buried there. His tomb is there. We went through that chapel, and I saw the photos of people they were looking for lost loved ones or, and whatnot. Something just happened, and I could not explain it. I didn't want to leave. I kept thinking about it. It was like this thing that was pleasantly gnawing at me for almost a year, following me, going, what was that experience I just had? And so then I gave the friend this little statue. A year later, he invites me to his church, and I went through a program called Alpha, where I really got to question my relationship and ask the hard questions that I was always told I wasn't allowed to ask. And so it took me about a year, and eventually I decided that I wanted to get baptized because I felt like I knew that this relationship was something that I was really serious about, and I needed a fresh start, even though I had been baptized as a baby. And I had to, I explained lovingly to my mom, this doesn't negate what you did before. This is just me recommitting to the relationship that I don't think I ever truly knew or appreciated. And it was an amazing day. I was so nervous. I almost talked myself out of doing it. I don't know why. I just thought I had all these thoughts and fears and worries, but I went through with it. And I just remember the moment I came up out of the water and all of that noise was gone. And I just felt so much joy and happiness.
I'm crying right now.
It was such an amazing experience. I feel like that day, because I remember the date, it's just going to be a part of one of the days of my life that's important, like my wedding anniversary or my birthday. And it has been something that has really drastically changed the way I look at life. And I recognize now that I do truly believe that as I got to understand what unconditional love actually looks like and to understand that I too was worthy of forgiveness, I started to notice it really powerful shifts happen in my own health where I've talked extensively about having really bad chronic back pain. That is almost entirely gone. I was able to finally get back to the gym, work out. I'm lifting weight heavier than I ever thought was possible for me. I was able to start reintroducing foods that I was super reactive to. It was like so much of my world that felt like it was not right in some way, and I was trying to manage all of these pieces, started to come into alignment. And I realized I never could truly know what unconditional love was or how to emulate that or even to forgive if I didn't have something to model it from. Honestly, I don't know. You probably I don't know what your exact story is, but I just remember when I was the first year of going to church, I would sit in church and I would just cry. And I was like, what's wrong with me? Everybody's probably thinking I'm the weirdest person crying.
They're like, Mom, you cry every time we're in church. I'm like, well, it feels so good.
It does. But I realized that it was my heart really softening. And I didn't know what true joy was. And I didn't understand what those feelings were. I knew that they were good, but I just didn't know what they were. So I I know that, you know, God came after me. He was always there, but he came after me at this point in my life. And it's had such a profound effect on so many different areas in my life. And I feel so grateful for so many of my clients and people who, are in my community who like cheered me on and celebrated this moment with me. Cause I was also kind of afraid. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to share this thing. And I was admittedly nervous that I was going to get a lot of pushback. I had like the biggest drop in followers that day when I shared my story on Instagram. And my husband just said to me, he's like, those weren't your people. He's like, those aren't your
Amen,
people.
brother.
So
I give him a big high five for me.
So anyway,
it's so
that's
beautiful.
my story. And I feel like a newbie little kid, I'm looking at everything through that lens. And I never read the Bible before, the last 2 years. It was never something that I even did. And I just cannot believe, there's moments where I'm like, I cannot believe that I deeply enjoy reading Ephesians.
Yeah.
Like this is
Go through 2 Kings. That's what I'm in right now. And I'm like, oh, there's a lot of bad things happened back then.
So it's just a beautiful place to be. And it's really transformed how I also see myself in the grand scheme of things. I'm here to serve. I'm here to help. I'm here to share my gifts.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that we were able to connect as well.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, I knew it from when we were in it. And when we were making this happen, I was like, God, I don't know if she's Christian.
Oh, wow. So that was a surprise that I put that on
I was like, but I want to say yes for her coming on the podcast because she can really bring a lot of value to the people that I serve. Are you okay with me saying yes? And I got a confirmation yes. And then I'm reading the form that I sent to you. And you said the thing about your baptism. I'm in my kitchen with my family and I'm like, oh, praise God. I'm like, babe, she's Christian. When I created this podcast, it was like, God asked me to do this. And I did say that anybody coming into it, sure, I want to bring value. I want to help people. That's my mission. But I really want them to be Christian when they come and speak because it is a different language. It is totally different. And where you are in the walk, for sure. It's 10 years for me. I'm not going to go totally into my story, but maybe a good opportunity for me to do a refresher of that. But I remember the day of coming up out of that water and the peace that surpasses all understanding is like, holy moly. So thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to learn more and more about that walk for you. And yes, if anyone is listening to this, Alpha is a fantastic place to start.
It is. I highly recommend it because no questions off the table. And there was one girl, she was probably 18. She was at the table and they said, who is Jesus to you? And she said, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And I was like, I asked her straight because I didn't understand that statement. I said, I don't understand that. What do you mean by that? And I didn't mean to offend her. And I still hope and pray because I do think about her to this day. I hope she did not take that as an offense, but I just didn't understand.
Yeah, what does that mean to you?
What does it mean? I didn't get it. And now I think how much her sharing her that and her answer with me profoundly changed my life. Like I still think about that to this day. So I think the Alpha process is amazing and I highly recommend it.
It changes so many lives. Like it's amazing. I'm doing a Bible in a year with Nikki Gumbel. And like, I'm like writing I'm like, I'm so excited to get to this. And I never thought I'd be like that either. So like totally can relate. But yeah, super amazing. All right, let's dive into some skin stuff.
Sure. Why
chronic skin conditions? Like what brought you to this place of being like, I'm going to do this with my life?
Well, I used to work for my dad. He was an ophthalmologist. So I was always kind of in the health space. And I decided I didn't want to be a doctor, didn't want to be a nurse. And I don't know how I ended up landing on nutrition. But I thought, you know what, that sounds like a good thing to give a shot towards. And at the time, back in like the late 2010s, it wasn't really as, I don't know, this profession has grown tremendously. You know, this whole space of like nutrition and wellness and all that stuff has grown quite a bit since like 2005, 2009, 10. And so I decided to go that route. And I had a lot of digestive issues prior to that. It's like starting when I was around 23. Started to have tons of diarrhea and gas, bloating, all sorts of stuff, headaches. I found out that I was gluten intolerant. I couldn't eat eggs or dairy and cashews and the cruciferous family and all this stuff. And I then decided after going back to school, so I was like, I actually want to help people that are legitimately sick, not just like coach and help them figure out like how to eat more greens in their diet. I went back for a master's in clinical nutrition. And as I was coming out of that, I wasn't super passionate about just like the gut focused stuff anymore. I had gone through this terrible 2-year period of living with and struggling with dyshidrotic eczema on my hands. So it impacts, for people who don't know, it impacts like the palms of your hands or the bottoms of your feet. And it's not just like dry skin, itchy skin. You get these flare cycles and there's these little like terrible little pustules that come out, and it's not a staph infection, and they'll like get big, super itchy, and then they break open and it's just like terrible. I really describe it as like a living hell. It was terrible. And so I did everything to not go on any type of serious medications. My dad had warned me to be very careful with topical steroid cream because he knew that it carried some really nasty side effects. And he was always, I got really lucky. My dad had a skepticism of conventional medicine. Like he was like, it's great if you get shot or you need to have cataract surgery. That's what he did. He's like, but if we're managing chronic illness, admittedly, Western medicine really fails at this because it's like big pharma just wants you to be on drugs and that's it. Like it's easier to manage these chronic conditions and they also make a ton of money doing this. And so, that was what I decided to go into. I started to get more clients that had skin issues. I approached it from a gut focused lens of how I used to do that. And I realized I was like, this doesn't work. Like, what's going on? Their gut issues improve and their fatigue and their brain fog and all these other things improve as expected, but the skin doesn't get better. And I don't understand why. It doesn't make sense. And that was where I realized that skin issues are more complicated than just gut issues. You can still have for example, if say you do have a state of an imbalanced gut microbiome, you can improve it to a point where you'll go back to pooping like normal. You won't have any gas or bloating and your body can kind of manage that. But if you have chronic skin issues, that is likely not enough. And oftentimes it throws a wrench in other parts of your, organ systems, like your liver detoxification. It really causes a lot of issues there and whatnot. So this is where I began to interview people, research. I was very upfront with clients. I'd be like, I don't know if this is going to work, but are you willing to give this a try? And they were desperate because they didn't know who else to go to. And they're like, sure. And so it was trial by error, testing out studies that I had found, like saying, oh, if you supplement with this probiotic for this duration, I found so many things that do not work, that are like highly recommended all over naturopathic websites and holistic websites and all this stuff. It like does not work. And in the meantime, I had to start thinking about the problems that I was finding from a different perspective and asking the question, well, like maybe this is a problem, but why would it be a problem? And how do I need to, like, I use certain herbs for people who have chronic skin issues and colleagues, because I will mentor other nutritionists. I've even mentored doctors. And they're like, I don't understand. There's no application for skin issues with this particular herb or these particular things. And I'm like, I understand, but these organisms are causing cytokines, which are chemical messengers that create inflammation under the surface. And we need to deal with those because we need to drop the inflammatory load. These are used for those. I get that it's not for skin, but you have to untether that. Your whole body is one unit. It works in harmony together. And if one area is out of balance, it's going to impact other areas. And why I've had some clients that have no gut issues and their skin's a mess and they still have a messed up gut microbiome. I have no clue why they have no gut issues. But either way, it's about that curiosity of looking under the surface, asking questions, and then saying, okay, is this true? Is this true? Let's test this. Let's see what the reaction is and then go from there. And so like, I love asking questions and knowing that I don't always have all the answers. Sometimes it's an educated guess. Sometimes it's a hunch. I can't explain. Sometimes I'm listening to somebody talk and listening to their story, looking at their paperwork in their labs. And I'm like, I can't explain it, but I think you have like a mold issue or you have this. What if we try this? Let's see what happens. Are you open to that? And so it's been a very interesting experience, an evolution of working directly with clients and expanding out, having other practitioners that also work with me now, and then developing, the program, which is how we met, that Skin Rash Rebuild program, where I could serve more people and help more people on their healing journey.
Yeah, I love that. I got to say the things that I learned in that program. So I've been in this industry I've always been in it since I was 16. Like I started taking certifications by the time I was 20. I didn't know what I was going to do full time. I had a really challenging life. I wasn't always Christian. I was led in different areas, and then God left the 99 to come and find me, just like he did with you. And how like I said, I came across your podcast and I started listening to it. And when I joined your program, I had already taken functional nutrition courses, like biosignature. So learning why we hold fat in different areas based off of a hormonal response, where you can almost like look at someone and know because of where you deposit fat, you probably have high estrogen or low testosterone or cortisol. Like we have those markers on our body. Why isn't this working? We need to figure this out. This plan's not working. And then the hormones. And how many times have you been before I came to you, I was at a double board certified specialist, but from one allergist, or I can't even remember, to the next one. And he told me to go on the $700 face cream. And I was like, no, because I'm not and then he wanted me to do the blue light therapy and drive to his clinic and just stand in there for 30 seconds. I was like, I can do that like 3 times a week. And he actually kicked me out of his clinic because of how much I pushed back. I brought your list of all of the blood labs to him and I said, well, I'm not leaving until you fill this lab then. And I sat there in his chair. I'm like, I'm not leaving. And people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, you just stick up for yourself. But I had the tool from you to bring to him. Mm-hmm. Right?
Did he do it?
He did it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Then that's when I brought it to you. And I was like, oh, see, I got this. So it was really awesome. But one of the biggest things that stood out for me after taking many courses in my own career was how you explain the liver. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Can you walk through? I love that the way you reference things. Because what I think is really important is anyone that's listening to this right now, you might have a skin issue. Your kids might have a skin issue. Your family, somebody in your life, or you're a coach. And Jennifer, I'm going to tell you, I tell my coaches that I work with, like, please go take this course if you want to actually help your clients. That's how I look at your program. So you got the floor, girl.
All right. So with your liver is an amazing organ system, but it does take the brunt of things beyond just like the toxins that we experience in our surroundings, right? That come from water, air, clothing that we wear, things we put on our body, paint, solvents, etc. It's more than just that. And I want to add to your point. It's not just about skin issues. Skin issues, it is like 96%. You probably have something that I would describe as liver detox overload, where the liver can't keep up. So it's overloaded with too many toxins and a lack of nutrients. But if you also have gut problems, especially if you've struggled with trying to get through any type of protocols, sometimes even medication, you're struggling, you feel like you're having reactions to everything, that's a sign that your liver cannot keep up. And when you do go to, we'll just say, kill things, like kill organisms, whether you're doing it with natural products or medications, your liver is so bogged down, it can't handle the excess toxins that are now being created by that essentially like the die-off. So what happens is we have 3 phases of liver. The first phase is highly regulated by your genes. And there are some foods that can make your liver, that part of liver detox, go faster or slower. They call the faster version like upregulating liver detox, whereas if you're pushing it slower, it would be downregulating. So if I use those terms, I just want you guys to like already have a basis for that. But phase 2 is highly nutrient dependent. And yes, there are enzymes involved in that. Some of you will recognize things like glutathione, because we talk a lot about that now in the wellness world, or methylation, for example. Phase 3 is really your elimination. So how are you pooping? Now, poop is, and bowel movements are not just the only way that we eliminate. You can do that through urination, sweat, breath, even like, I think tears are part of an elimination, because sometimes we got to let emotions out, and that can be a part of it. Breast milk is actually, even though it's a form of nourishment, that's also an elimination pathway, believe it or not. So that just means you do have to be careful with things that you take if you're breastfeeding, because you are potentially passing those to your baby. So just an FYI, moms. And so phase 2 and phase 3 are typically where things go really wonky. So there's 2 ways that most people are like, okay, I'll either do a liver detox, or I'll like some type of supplement, or they'll do like a cleanse with food. The other 2 options are castor oil packs or coffee enemas. And so none of those options are truly impacting phase 2 detox. This is sort of like the thing standing in the way between you having very toxic materials in your body versus getting them out. It is the thing that they have to go through. Everything goes through this. And so you need nutrients in order to process these toxins. If you do not have an ample supply, most of these nutrients, by the way, we don't make. We do make glutathione, but again, you need an ample supply of the nutrients that make glutathione to even have it. You cannot process things efficiently. And so the line, I like to think of it as like a doctor's waiting room. The line that comes through, the toxins that come through phase 1 are actually made more toxic. So they're hanging out in the waiting room. Then you have all of these toxins that come from the GI tract that actually jump the line of phase 1 and go straight through phase 2. But they too keep expanding the pool. So if you have a lot of unfriendly gut organisms, all of their waste products, you don't just like poop or urinate them out. They actually have to go to the liver through the portal vein, and they have to be detoxified down phase 2 pathways. One of the main pathways is called the glycine pathway. So it requires glycine, which is an amino acid. It's in a lot of foods. It's also in your collagen. I'll tell you more about that in a moment, but you need glycine in order to repackage these toxins into something that's water soluble so that you can get them out of the system. If you don't have enough, depending on how old you are, this may make sense or not, but I remember watching the I Love Lucy episode where Lucy and Ethel are at the chocolate factory and they're wrapping the bonbons. As you think of it like that, the line starts speeding up with time, and then they're like throwing the bonbons in their hat, down their blouse, all over the place to try and get rid of the bonbons because they couldn't keep up. And that's what happens. Your liver can't keep up. There's a bigger load, and now you're stuck in like this sort of toxic soup where your body's like, whoa, there's way too much inflammation. I can't handle this. You try and maybe do like a gut protocol, and then all hell breaks loose and you feel terrible. And that's why. Elimination, we definitely don't want to be constipated, because that would be another area where we could end up backed up and not being able to eliminate toxins. One important point, how you said about there's like estrogen, there's patterns, right, of hormones that can cause estrogen is one of those hormones that has to be detoxified through the liver and then goes through bile to the GI tract and then ends up through stool being moved out through bowel movements. Again, if you end up in a situation where you've got a lot of unfriendly organisms, they see that estrogen, it's just hanging out way too long. They turn it back on, it gets reabsorbed, and now you end up in a state of estrogen dominance where your body can't clear out the excess estrogen. So that being said, I just want to what was the point I was going to say about, the collagen. We tried for so long to figure out if there was a certain level of dosing for collagen that would replete the pool of glycine to help clients. Cause listen, if you can do it with food, I'm more than happy with that. We could not ever get the type of results that we could get with glycine supplementation. And so it's cheap. Thankfully, it tastes sweet if you just get the powder. And adding in glycine can get rid of salicylate sensitivity. It can really help on so many levels. It can help people sleep better. It is such an underutilized amino acid, and it is cheap, and your body needs it. So,
yeah, I remember for me with the histamine stuff, I started off I think it was 3 grams. Is it 3 grams? Is that what
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed a big change. Okay, I'm fascinated with the way that you just explained that, because to me, it just makes sense. And I've been in all these courses, right, where you're just trying to understand it. But even connecting with this forced gut reset, forced liver detox, my gosh, I feel terrible. Do you remember that I won a year in your program?
I do.
That was God. That was God, because he wanted us here today. I know that for a fact. And because I don't win anything, I sat in my kitchen, same spot, actually, when I did this, yay, she's Christian. I sat there and I'm like, hey, wait, that's my name. I know that person. I just won a year. This is so cool. And my family was there and they're like, oh, that's so amazing. Because, I was just so absorbed. I don't want to leave. I want to stay. And after that, I was introduced with a gentleman who started teaching me about iron dysregulation and how it traps in the liver. And that was a big part of, because you're the only other person that talked about colostrum that I'd ever experienced. And then I was starting, and then I was starting to understand a little bit more about peptides too, but it didn't feel like that was the avenue that I knew I needed to go. It just didn't feel like it was going to be complete, which now, knowing some of the things that I know, I'm grateful for, but I know that that's a whole other conversation, because
it's a big conversation.
It's a really big conversation right now. But the gentleman that I was introduced to, I remember when I met him, I'm like, I really hope one day that you guys could connect. He's brilliant. And maybe we can get him on your show somehow.
Absolutely.
I learned so much from him about iron overload and dysregulation and how it's hanging out in the organs and really damaging the tissues and how to get it out safely. And you would love him.
It's a big deal. And I think it's just amazing to me how much we don't, I literally back in February went to teach a huge room of clinical nutritionists about this whole liver detox thing that I just shared with you. And they're sitting there all like, really? Is it safe to supplement with that much glycine? Is it they were so perplexed, as if this was what we were taught. I just really dove into it and then started to connect dots. And I'm sitting there going, I don't think I found something like it wasn't like I found this really random rare thing. I just was curious. And, it's become so important because I've had so many clients have really great effects. Now, granted, I want to just be very careful in how I say this, because I think sometimes people listen to things and they go, oh, so if I start taking glycine that I should feel great in a week. That's not the case. If your levels are really depleted and you've got a lot of stuff going on, despite how much you eat in your diet, because that also assumes that you were able to digest it and then absorb it, because that's an assumption that we make. We don't actually know if that's true. That's why the supplementation is actually better, because free-formed amino acids don't need to be digested. They just get absorbed. But there is so much to the beauty of health. Sometimes we want to talk about these complex things like peptides and all of the different fancy things that we can do, when in reality, sometimes we have to go back to the foundation and go, what did we miss? What did we skip over? What did we assume that was just too simplistic, and that at this point we must just all know it? Get curious. There may be really crucial foundational details in your own health journey that were completely overlooked because everybody's like, oh, we got to get you on this, the glow peptide or whatever it may be. And they skip, like you're saying, iron overload. They skip different crucial foundational things.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And like, as a Christian, we should be praying. God will bring the right people into our path. Like he brought me you. It was like the right fit. I knew that this was a safe place for me to be. And I trusted. Right. And we have to use that discernment. God's going to give that to the individual that's listening to this right now. If you've been, Jen, you lived in what you call hell. I didn't even want to look at my own face.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now what do I do? I already have issues with liking my own body, and now it's my face. And then it's like all these other things. But when I teach others in their health journey, it's like, let's just start here. Let's just pull everything back and just go with the basics. What did God give us in creation? Because that, he said, was good. We've just come in and been like, here's all this crap. And it's not to be fearful of food, but to ask questions like, this isn't making me feel good. This is causing me to have issues. So let's pull back the layers, right? Piotr also did that's the gentleman's name. He talked to us about how bacteria in our gut, most people think it's just glucose. It lives off of sugar, that kind of stuff. But he's like, they live off of iron. Right. And
Correct.
I was like, that makes sense. But it made sense after I took your program. And I was like, okay, now I can understand. So why don't you talk to us about, I know we don't have tons of time, but I want to make sure, I want you to cover what you think people really need to hear. But let's talk about something like, I see these young youth with just welts on their face, and it breaks my heart. Like, what do we say to them? How do we help them? Because I know that's probably killing their confidence. And they're just having these massive breakouts. And like, what do you see?
I think one of the things that I see is this recognition that, first of all, it's hard when you're younger. I will admit that, because we want it to just go away. And I don't know that necessarily changes. I do think that as we get older, we do just want it to go away, but we have the ability, because our brain is fully developed, that we understand that there's probably a lot more to it. At least at some point, you start to see that. I think we have to get to a place where we can hold multiple truths at the same time, that we are worthy of love, that we are worthy of loving ourselves regardless of what's happening to our body, and that our body is not in conflict with us. It's just that we don't know how to read the signals that it is giving us. And if we get curious, if we practice patience, if we give ourselves that grace, and we also come to the table with the passion and the relentless persistence that we would have for a child. Because I would imagine most people are like, well, if this was happening to my kid, I would be there every step of the way. But for some reason, with ourselves, as we get older, we start to back burner a little bit. We make excuses. I don't need to do this right now. I don't need to do it. And that's fine. Everyone makes the decision on their own time. But we are worthy of all of these wonderful things, and that our skin does not define who we are. It does not define your worth in this moment, and it doesn't define it when it's deciding to freak out for literally no reason that doesn't make sense at the worst possible time. But the question for you that ultimately one has to sit with is, what's going on? Am I comfortable with just taking a medication, shutting off the symptoms, and going about my life? Or is this possibly an opportunity to say, hey, I am the steward of this one vessel, this one gift, because I think it is a tremendous gift, and we only get one body. We do not get another. This is our one opportunity here to steward whatever you want to call this. I've heard some people call it, well, it's like a flesh suit we're responsible for. But I do think that if you want to ask the question why, and it's a noble question, it's a reasonable question, is it possible that your body is trying to tell you something? It's inviting you to the table to have a conversation with it, and it might be the most inconvenient time in your life. I've talked to mothers who are dealing with 2 young kids, and they're going to have a third, and they're pregnant, and it's not a convenient time to be having this conversation. They would rather have it later, or someone who's on vacation, or any number of things. It's just not convenient. But it invites us in to look at our body and the relationship that we have with it and what we can control. And I'll just share this. I have a client who's been in my program for a while, and he's been dealing with something called topical steroid withdrawal because he became addicted to topical steroids. I had mentioned earlier, my dad had warned me to be careful how much you use them, because we do know now that the body can develop a dependency. And what you end up is not only with the skin issues you had, but something entirely different that is pretty monstrous, pretty destructive of your health, and it can go on for years, unfortunately. And there's no cure for it. And so we were talking about how he has struggled at night going from like his dress clothes to go to work to getting changed and putting on pajamas before bed. And just the act of doing that would cause this tremendous itch attack. And he just, if he starts scratching, he can't stop. And then he's, tearing at his skin, and it was terrible. And we sat with a question of like, is it possible? Okay, could it be mold? Could it be all these things? But is it also possible that there's something else here in your nervous system, something that's gotten trapped, where your body is going back to a state where it was in this terrible, terrible situation, and you're being triggered by this? Like, you're literally living in a trauma loop every single night. And so he shared with the group yesterday how from that conversation, he got a prayer journal. He started writing prayer. So this prayer journal has prompts. He started doing gratitude in the morning, gratitude in the evening, prayers in this journal, and other things. And he reported that he is having no problems at all with these itch attacks at night. His mood is so much better. And his wife even noticed that he's not talking about nor obsessing over his skin nearly as much as he was before starting this. So I don't necessarily think that we always have to say, what is the diet? What is the supplements? What's the protocol? What's the medication? I do think that those things are important, but there's this other piece of how we could become so dysregulated through this process, because it is traumatizing. It's traumatizing for kids. It's traumatizing for us as adults to go through something that makes us feel like we're marked. Because like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, you can end up with that, and people are like, it's the invisible illness. Everyone thinks I'm lying, because nobody can see what you're experiencing. Whereas with a rash, everyone can see depending on where it's located, and it really impacts your confidence and whatnot. And so I think that's my invitation, is to say, what does stewardship look like to you over the body that you have? What would you do for a child? If you can't do it for yourself, how would you show up for your child, or a child that you know, where you would go to bat for them? And what are the values that you, like, if you looked back in your life, what do you wish you would have done? I mean, we can kind of get perspective sometimes if we think about, like, if I was 30 years down the road, what would I tell myself? What does that conversation look like? And then, as you said, sit in prayer. Ask God, what is happening to me? What is the lesson here? What is the thing that I need to learn? Is it having patience? Is it listening? Is it being present to the things I'm experiencing? And at the same time, knowing that whatever you choose to do is the right path for you. Because I want to make sure that any person who's listening to this doesn't mistake me in thinking that, like, I have judgment about use of medication. I don't. I have clients that have been on, as you know, Krista,
and I can like vouch for that. In the program, you're like, wherever you are, this is where we're going to go. Yep. This is what we're going to do. That is one of my favorite pieces of your program.
Because you can get off of these medications, but I understand that suffering is a part of our experience here. And this is something that I'm not going to speak about it because I don't know enough at this time, but I do find the concept of suffering, especially in terms of like our relationship of like the human experience to God and everything. I do find the concept of suffering to be really interesting. At the same time, you don't get the time back. So all the photos that you miss of not being in them because you're embarrassed about the way you look, so the family photos you miss out on, the vacations you miss out on, being at your kid's soccer game, you miss out on all these things. And so my preference would be to really sit with, what does your healing journey look like? And being okay if it includes medication and doing the other things, because you can get off of the medications, but you got to bring the inflammation down and then slowly titrate off the meds. So it's like learning to drive a car. essentially. We don't want the wheels to fly off. We want to find this pace that your body can handle. And it really gives you a different perspective on what your body is capable of and how it speaks to you. I just think it's so important to know that your body's not trying to fight against you. It doesn't hate you. It's not being uncooperative just because it feels like it. There is something it's trying to ask you for help, for assistance.
You see it in the skin. You see it in the women that are hiding behind their kids in the picture because they don't like how or they don't want to put a bathing suit on, or, it's a really good mindset to have as you walk through a health journey, no matter where you are on that health journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Each and every one of us we are called to steward our body. Like it's part of scripture. At no point did God say that it was just going to be this easy thing, but the better we feel, the stronger we feel in our own skin, the more we're going to be able to do what he's actually really truly called us to. And it's whatever plan he has for your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then I feel good. I could do more. I can feel strong enough. I can be more patient. I can hone in on those fruits of the spirit that he freely gives.
Yeah.
Okay, I know we're running out of time soon. It's so hard. I have like 6 million questions. So you're going to have to come back. That's it. We're going to have to do. Yeah.
I don't mind. I love having these conversations.
They're just real. Yeah.
It's real, and it's something that, like, I said to somebody, they were like, would you ever take back, your journey? And I said, no, because I can't unsee what I've seen. Like it is amazing to me. So occasionally I'll come across people who say well, I used to have faith and now I don't. And I'm like, I could not unsee God's love and Jesus's love for me. I cannot unfeel that and unsee that and unsee that relationship, because it so drastically changed how I see the value of who I am. And I'm not saying I'm the most important person. I'm certainly not, but I understand that I'm a part of this bigger plan. And I recognize how much my clients and every person that I have, how much they've inspired me in ways that they, like I said, they don't even realize, they don't even know. And when I shared about my baptismal photo, I shared that on Instagram. Yes. Okay. Sure. There was this mass exodus because apparently that was bothersome to individuals. And again, those are not my people. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I got the most amazing comments, little DMs and things of welcome to, you're a sister in Christ. Welcome to the family. I'm so joyous for you. And I didn't realize how many people in my community actually were praying for me.
They literally
didn't know.
As you were talking, I'm like, you're an answer to so many people's prayers. Do you know that?
I'm just me.
But you are there. That was part of my devotional this morning. So maybe it's very well timed. I'm getting this really deep sense. You are an answer to many people who have prayed for you. And it just, it's just how God calls us. It's just such a beautiful thing. And now we get to do that for others too.
Yeah.
And even this right here, this is an answered prayer in my life. The fact that I get to sit here and have this conversation with you today, and highly recommend from a deep perspective of, hey guys, whoever's listening to this that is struggling with their skin, I don't know if you want to give a whole list of different skin conditions that they can reach out to you about.
Yeah.
But I really do recommend your Skin Rash Rebuild program. I personally took it. I was in it. I can 100% say you're in safe hands. You are definitely going to learn more than you have ever learned in your life. Get ready to do the work. One thing I wanted to tell you before we get too far off. Do you know how you have us in the beginning fill out the questionnaire of, you get a number of the histamine, the hormones, all that stuff. So I have my original one. I totally should have brought it here when I was doing this today, but I have my original one, and it was all these numbers were massive, 19, 13, whatever. Nothing is over a 5.
That's amazing.
I have it in my bedroom, but it was, I was just this is so cool.
I'm so excited for you, because one of the things that I find frustrating, because that's the thing, you were saying, there's so much around medication. Do we use it? Do we not? And not having judgment around that. But also I recognize that this is if you decide to go outside of your insurance, and even sometimes with insurance, it's expensive, right? There's cost. And so one of the things that we did, I was like, how do I take my brain and the way my brain works and help other people? So we created all of these assessments, and we've had clients where they legitimately cannot afford to go do like a stool test. And they go through the assessments and they got some blood labs that are pretty basic and figured out that they had parasites and fungal overgrowth and all this stuff, and had amazing transformations just from using those assessments. And they can be reused over and over then to go, okay, I did this 2 months ago. Let me do this again now and see where my numbers are.
Yeah.
And that was always, I wanted to make things accessible and more user friendly. And you were saying like what skin conditions, it can be for any type of dermatitis or eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, perioral dermatitis, chronic hives, any type of like urticaria, dermatographia. We've worked with clients who have topical steroid withdrawal or TSW, also hidradenitis suppurativa. We've also had some people who didn't know what they had, and they couldn't get a clear diagnosis, or they had multiple dandruff, seborrheic dermatitis. They have multiple skin issues, and they're like, I don't know even where to begin with this because I have so many things going on. My functional doctor wants me to spend $3,000 in testing and cut out all these foods, and I don't understand how I'm going to get better.
Yeah.
Or they've tried, I am the person, unfortunately, where a lot of clients have seen 5, 6, 7 doctors beforehand, trying multiple different functional doctors and practitioners, but there's no training for skin. This was something that I was just curious about. I experienced it. I had the dyshidrotic eczema on my palms and then hidradenitis suppurativa in my armpits. So I legitimately understand the level of suffering that one experiences from having this. And perhaps that gave me a little bit more compassion and empathy for people to really know what it's like to like lose your life to these skin issues and wanting your life back.
Was he took what was intended for harm and turned it into good. So now you're using that opportunity to go and do something good with it.
Yeah.
That's what I say all the time. I'm like, oh, whatever. Okay, fine. But I'm going to do something with this, though. I'm not just going to sit back and not do that. And then I know that you've made it so that so people can afford to come in too, which I know that was a big important piece for you as well.
It was.
Yeah,
because we have a virtual clinic that is great for some individuals who are like, I don't want to do all this stuff. You just figure it out. Make me the protocols and I'll do the work. And that's fine. But then we have the Skin Rash Rebuild where it's like, you're doing a bit more of the work. We have live coaching calls every single week with myself and my other clinical nutritionist. And we coach people and say, hey, what's going on? Where are you? What did the assessments say? Okay. Oh, you're allergic to this. Okay. Let's tweak here. And it's having someone sit with you who understands that process and can help you make adjustments. Or it's like, how do I ask for this? That was on the call yesterday. The coaching call that I had was, how do I ask for this particular test? What are the words? And I'm sitting there going, okay, write this down. This is what you're going to say. And if they say this, then you're going to go, okay, blah, 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 because it's a negotiation. Yeah. And also knowing we've got to get our feelings out of it, because it is unfortunately conventional medicine, I find sometimes has to be a little bit more of a transactional relationship where if they say no, if they're not coming to the table, meeting you part way, it does not serve you to sit here and get super angry and defeated and throw your hands up in disgust and walk away. That's not helpful. So we have to say, all right, let's check our feelings at the door. This is a transactional relationship. This was my goal. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to acknowledge their perspective. I'm going to bring all these things to the table and appreciate them so that, again, it keeps the relationship on the up and up. And I act within the value system that I believe. Right. But at the same time, I need to get this done. And I need to be persistent in finding a way to that, because there's a solution. Every problem only exists because there's not a solution yet.
Right. Oh, I love that. I even in one of my courses, I have like how to ask for blood labs. This is a module that we've created for that, because it is it's a frequent question. Okay. I'm asking you one last question.
Okay.
One day, we're all going to stand before God, before Jesus. what are you hoping you're going to be remembered by when that day comes?
I would hope that God and Jesus would see how much my heart has been transformed, and that armor that I spent so much time and intellectual power trying to protect myself, how much my heart has changed and how I allowed that to lead to whatever goodness that I could leave behind in my life. I used to think like my purpose was my work, but then someone had asked me in Alpha, what happens if you're in a bad car accident and you can no longer do this? And while I think this is part of my purpose here is to really be and live in alignment with what God's will is. I don't know what his plan is. I really don't. And I pray, I started, I don't know if this will help anyone. It was suggested to me to journal praying, especially when like I feel really conflicted and I have a lot of feelings. Some are uncomfortable to like write out the prayer, like just write it all out. And I can't tell you how incredibly helpful and clarifying that process has been. It's such a simple idea I never thought of. But I recognize that I'm here to find and know God's love and grace. And I am so eternally grateful for that. Like I said, I don't think you can ever truly, I don't know, I'm biased, I guess. I just don't feel like I could ever truly know what it meant to love and to truly trust and to truly forgive if you don't have something to model it from. It's not a concept that we just read about in books. If you don't experience it, and look, our parents did the best they could, right? Our siblings do the best they can. Our friends do the best they can, but they're not God. None of us show up perfectly. We're all imperfect. 100%. And if we model off of imperfection, what are we doing?
Yep.
So I'm so grateful for that. And I would hope that God would see just how much, I mean, I guess he already knows what's possible. And I recognize too that all of the trials and tribulations that I go through are there to help. I think about the idea of like being forged like a sword because God sees you at the end. He knows what you're capable of and all of this. I think of that even with my clients, but all of us go through this to become what God sees, the potential that God sees and knows is possible for us. So,
amen, sister. I'm so happy that we did this today. Thank you so much for being here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put all things in the show notes. So if anyone's looking to get in contact with Jennifer, we'll throw a link in there, get them set up. Maybe they can message you if they have questions about the program.
Absolutely. And we have a free webinar as well that they can go and watch. It'll like explain some of what we've talked about, especially from like what's actually driving this and what are the connections? Because it's the stuff that like big pharma doesn't want you to know. And it's the stuff that the doctors are like, oh, that's not a thing. Even though it's the research that big pharma did to develop all their drugs.
That's good.
So you can go through that. And I'm happy to be of assistance to anybody in your audience and to you. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Strength for Generations. If this podcast encouraged you, it would be a blessing if you took a quick minute to leave a 5-star review. It helps more families hear this message and find hope for their health and faith journey. It lights me up to know this podcast is helping you. And if you feel led to share this episode, text it to a friend, post it to your stories, or send it to someone on your heart. God might use it to encourage someone who really needs it today. And don't forget to eat steaks, lift weights, love Jesus, and keep doing it His way.